Okay, what is up, guys? Apologies, I did make a video, but because uploaded it on a very old iPod that is no longer compatible with YouTube, I have now had to come up with the alternatives to zip it into YouTube. So I'm sorry you have to watch it this way. But it's good enough anyway. I'm just holding my iPhone to the iPod, so it's a good enough anyway. Plus, this video might take this video's over 15 minutes, and YouTube does not allow that. So once again, this video will have to get split into two. So I will play this button. Just watch the video, and I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, what is up, guys? Today we are going to be talking about how a generation causes a counterculture. So we're going to be talking about counterculture and mainstream culture, and the timeline of it all, and how it all started. Okay, so counterculture always starts off in response to a mainstream culture, and the counterculture is always done within the youth of that decade. So the mainstream culture is always implemented usually by the parents, and the youth, who are usually, by youth I don't mean babies, by youth I mean late teens to late 20s, come up with their own counterculture in rebellion to the mainstream culture that is being imposed to them in response by their parents, because kids just like to rebel against society, and it is the older people who impose the rules of society. Okay, so let's talk about a generation. One generation could be classed. A generation is a bit like a decade, so a generation could be classed as a person born in 1990 to a person born in 2000. So the entire 1990s would be one generation, and people born from 2000 onwards to 2010, not only would it be its own decade, the 2000s, but it'd also be its own generation as well. And each decade has different political climates. So let's start off with the 60s, okay? So the 60s was a time, the mainstream culture within the 60s was, women have to stay in the kitchen, men have to all get military buzz cuts and have to go out and fight communism, join the army and go out and fight communism, which was a huge problem at the time. When I speak about this, I'm all talking along the terms within the United States. So I'm aware there were different counterculture movements and different political climates within those decades in different countries, but I'm talking in regards to United States here. So the guys had to all get military buzz cuts, and they had to all go off in Vietnam and fight the spread of the Soviet Union, and segregation was good, and everything was Christian, and everything was Americana dream, so of course, with that being the mainstream society, the youth of that time rebelled by creating the well-known hippie movement, which was rebellion to this very patriot Christian sort of mainstream culture of like women staying, no sex before marriage, and segregation being good and all that. So These people then, the youth of that time, rebelled with the whole hippie movement, with the whole sex, drugs, rock and roll, and obviously they were more tolerant and helped push the civil rights movement of the segregated blacks, African Americans of the time. They were anti-war, they were pro-peace, they protested against the Vietnam War, so there was a lot of tension amongst the hippie kids and their sort of pro-military, pro-nationalist, pro-Christian parents. And obviously, not only is the battle ideological, it's also cultural as well. So these youth had their own fashion, their own trends, their own genres of music, and so on and so on. So then we get into, let's say, the 80s and the 70s. So obviously a counterculture will always become so popular enough that it will become the mainstream culture, and then the kids of those times will rebel, just like how their parents rebelled against their parents. So it's like the cycle that just keeps continuing and continuing and continuing, and it's just this weird thing that just happens, okay? So obviously the hippie narrative, the liberal views are now the mainstream views within the 90s and the 80s, because guess what, the people they are rebelling against are all old and dead now, so they won. So the hippie counterculture is now the mainstream culture. So within the 80s, so within the 70s and 80s, the culture is still very liberal. So in response, all the kids within that time go conservative. So like I say, in the 80s and the 90s, that's when 70s and the 80s, that's when sort of the horror movie craze came out, and the hip-hop music and heavy metal and violent video games, and there was all this fear and all this panic back in the sort of 80s, you know, and a lot of people think that's the fault of the Christians, but no, it's the fault of the peace-loving hippies, because they didn't like the idea of horror movies and seeing blood and gore, and they thought it would be bad for the youth, and, you know, all these video games where you got to shoot people, you know, they thought it would influence the kids, it'd be bad for the kids, so they demonized it, and of course it became popular. So yeah, and of course, and then not only does the culture start to get conservative, but then the political climate starts to get conservative, and that's where you get your whole Reagan 80s from. So there goes your sort of 70s and 80s there. Now, in the 90s, in the 90s, the Soviet Union collapses, the Berlin Wall falls, there's none of this Red Scare now, there's none of this, the nuclear bomb's gonna happen 2 minutes to midnight, you know. So in the 90s, people start to get pretty liberal again, because nobody's militaristic now, because there's not that fear anymore of the Soviet Union, because it's gone. So society starts concentrating less on military and less on nationalism, and all that government funding started to go into new developmental projects like technology instead of missiles. So we start to see the spread of computers, the internet, and all that sort of things, and that's so people could watch their Fresh Prince of Bel-Air better on their dial-up computer or listen to their grunge music or whatnot of the time.